World War II was the biggest and deadliest war in history, involving more than 30 countries. On average, 27,000 people were killed each day between 1939 to 1945, and in just 6 years, the death toll has reached to 75 million, which is about 5% of China populations, 23% of US populations, and 95% of Germany populations. Yup, imagine that a country perished in 6 years. Anyway, what made World War II so deadly beside the unforeseen scales of the battle? It was the targeted extermination of civilian populations. Most of you know Hitler is one of the causes to World War II, but do you know there are actually numerous major causes, and without them, Hitler wouldn't even start a war? First of all, the Treaty of Versailles. What is this? Basically, the Treaty of Versailles held Germany responsible for starting the World War I and imposed harsh penalty in terms of loss of territory, demilitarizations, and massive reparations payments, which is up to 132 billion gold marks, which is about $269 billion today. That was the first cause, and the following with the Great Depressions. The Great Depressions spread rapidly from the United States to Europe and the rest of the world after World War I. Germany, which were the most deeply in debt to the United States, was hardest hit. If you do not know this, Germany is well known that had a hyperinflation crisis after World War I. Prices ran out of control. The exchange rate for $1 had skyrocketed to 4 trillion marks in November 1923, which means you finally became a billionaire, but you cannot even afford a loaf of bread. And then the Great Depression hit Germany again. Nearly 40% of the German workforce was unemployed by 1932. And in addition to the causes which coupled ineffective governments in many of these European states led to slow reconstructions and poor economic growth. Therefore, there is no way that Germany can afford to pay the reparation payments. The Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany while failing to resolve the underlying issues, and with economic distress within Germany, helped fuel the ultra-nationalist sentiments that finally led to the rise of the Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party. Then the coming of the World War II just 2 decades later. So here comes the questions. What if World War II never happened? What would the world look like? Will the United States still be a superpower? Would the world be better or worse? Here are several scenarios that I think you should know about. We have to talk about Adolf Hitler, one of the most well-known and revered figures in history, who orchestrated both World War II and the Holocaust event. So what would happen to Hitler? According to the statement, Adolf Hitler already showed traits of his hatred to cosmopolitanism and the multinational characters of Vienna in his childhood. After World War I, he found discipline and comradeship satisfying and was confirmed in his belief in the heroic virtues of war. He started to obsess with the idea of superiority of the pure German race, which he called Aryan. Hitler believed the war was the only way for the German race to expand. In the mid-1930s, he secretly began the rearmament of Germany, a violation of the Versailles treaties. In other words, he is the source of the World War II and he will make it happen unless he never exists, or he died during World War I, or he lived out his life as an artist which he never had any involvement in the Nazi party, and he was never able to rise to power. Then that starts a change of events such as Holocaust never happened, so the Jews weren't killed. There could be as many as 32 million Jews globally right now rather than the current population of 14 million. The Nazis would not have got into power. But a Germany without Nazis in charge might still have turned into militaristic nationalisms. Undoubtedly, there was a sentiment that Germany had been ill-treated by the Treaty of Versailles. The militaries especially believed Germany deserved to regain her status as a great power and authoritarian society. The Great Depression indisputably ended during World War II, but only by the end of the war, not the start of it. The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world, lasting from the stock market crash of 1929 to 1939. The market crash which sent Wall Street into a panic and wiped out millions of investors, and then consumer spending and investment dropped, causing steep declines in industrial output and putting 20 million Americans unemployed, and nearly half the country's bank had failed. But the good thing is there was no huge uptick in suicides following the market crash. That's probably because not everyone was invested in stock market by the time. Now, without World War II, the Great Depression will last longer or never end. First, the European nations that went to war needed goods such as tanks, airplanes, parachutes, ammunition, and medical equipment. That's when American factories and manufacturing kick into high gears to supply these products and more to our allies like Britain's. Undeniable, the World War II was a great boost to the United States economy and create millions of new jobs, and then growing the GDP and providing tax to government. Without war, there will be no such demand and the United States will continue struggling to emerge and stuck in the unemployment problem. Secondly, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and the United States decided to join the war, in a sudden, over 10 million Americans went into the military. Obviously, many of these people left jobs to do so, and this put an almost immediate end to the unemployment crisis. Because of this, business of all sizes suddenly had job openings galore and a huge demand to fill them. If World War II never happened, we will be still experiencing the long-term effects from the Great Depressions today. But it has gotten a lot better. People have been able to recover jobs and help the economy rise. If you do not know, the World War actually destroyed numbers of empires, such as Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary empires collapsed after World War I, and World War II destroyed Germany and Japan as great powers. The UK and France were left as shadows of their former selves. The USSR and the United States both emerged as a formidable military powers. Now, if World War II never happens, first of all, the United States will not gain the world power status or the only superpower nation in the world. As I mentioned earlier, the United States was the only country to emerge from the World War II in strong economies and military shape. The United States took on an active role to pump over $13 billion in rebuilding the war-torn cities of Western Europe, which helped bolster the economic strength and international prominence in the aftermath of the World War II. With a globe-spanning network of alliances and military bases hindering the global power and influence of the Soviet Union. Without World War II, the Soviet Union would become the world's greatest power. Soviet power was already in control of the entire territory of the USSR in the early 1920s, and a gradual economic and social stabilizations began to set in. They had been preparing for confrontations with Germany and had been beefing up the arms industry and military infrastructures between 1933 and 1940s. Do not forget, Soviet Union defeated Nazi Germany in the Battle of Moscow, perhaps the most important war that would ultimately decide the outcomes of World War II. Therefore, without World War II, Russian Empire would have had the chance to modernize and be one of the world's great powers. And once the Soviet Union became a superpower, Asia would be miserable because most of the USSR territories were snatched from other countries. Not to mention other countries, the Soviet Union has always been eyeing Japan, wanting to take away the 4 northern islands. Without World War II, the Soviet Union and Japan would have had another war. And then the second country that will emerge to world power is Germany. Surprise, right? German army had not been defeated in World War I. They surrendered because of depleted resources and war weariness at home. Do you know when German soldiers returned to their countries, they were welcomed as heroes? After World War I, regime rearmament was the major focus in Germany. They restricted other imports in order to focus on things needed for war materials. They had special institutions to improve branches of the military and infrastructure needed for military. By 1939, it had over 70 million army, which is the second largest army and the best air force worldwide. They also had an adequate submarine arms, and that was under Adolf Hitler administrations. Adolf Hitler was a very intelligent person and amazing in military tactics. When he became chancellor in 1933, Germany suffered the economic effects of the Great Depressions with unemployment soaring around. He introduced policy aimed at improving the economy, and by 1938, unemployment was practically extinct. If you do not know, the Volkswagen, known as the People's Car, was founded by a Nazi, and the Beetle design was actually an idea from Hitler. The goal was to enable everybody to travel with affordable and practical car, and the famous German Autobahn was built by Nazi. Some say Hitler actually designed the Nazi flags and the logo swastika, as well as the SS uniform. So, if Hitler did not start World War II but put his mind on developing the country, it is not difficult for Germany to rise as a superpower nation in Europe. One of the most infamous World War II inventions is the atomic bomb. After Japan doing the dirty works of attacking Pearl Harbor on 1941, by August 1942, the Manhattan Project was underway. Manhattan Project was the codename for the secret US government research and engineering project during the Second World War that developed the world's first nuclear weapons. By 1945, the United States responded Japan by launching its first, which is so far and only nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing an estimated 210,000 people. 6 days later of the bomb, the Japanese surrendered unconditionally, bringing an end to World War II. Stalin suddenly saw US possessions of the atomic bomb as a direct threat to the Soviet Union, and he was determined to level the playing field. Then, more and more countries as well were on their way to developing their own bomb. So, without World War II, numerous world-changing technologies like nuclear bombs would have developed at different times and places. If you do not know, the first computer was invented during World War II as a way to speed up the cracking of the Enigma codes. In the movie, The Imitation Games tells the story of how the world's first computer helped defeat the Nazis. Jet engine is now being used by airline to carry passengers all over the globe, was actually created by Germans for combat purposes during World War II. Until then, the world was using bigger propeller-powered fighter planes. Radar, perfected by the British to detect incoming air raids during Second World War, is still used in everyday life. There were many other non-lethal innovations during the war in the field of medicines and technology that have drastically reshaped the world, such as penicillin was invented during the time and probably saved millions of lives, and countless more since. The first flu vaccines for military use in 1945. US surgeons standardized the productions of blood plasma for medical use, and thanks to a happy accident with some melted chocolate, a kitchen appliance that is in nearly every US home using now, the microwave, was invented during World War II. In short, World War II was the first high-tech war. Without the impetus of war, our technology might not be as advanced as it is now. There will be no satellite, meaning no first step to the moon, no weather report, no airplane, no computer, and then no iPhone. Yeah, that's really bad. But after all, human is born to be creative. Who knows, there will be different technologies invented without World War II, but I bet it will be much slower. In conclusions, without World War II, the world would still have been bound to experience massive conflicts, arriving at different paces and time but resolving familiar tensions between capitalisms and communisms, colonialisms and national independence, and nationalisms and internationalisms. Germany might have conquered Europe eventually, and Stalin would have started war with Germany, and then Japan will still invade China. How those conflicts might have played out differently, we can only guess. The history has shown us the lessons. The world needs to rely on its international institutions and cooperations between nations around the globe now more than ever. As long as countries have more to gain from maintaining peace than they do from fighting wars to achieve their goals by force, relative peace should be with us for the rest of the 21st century. Because we should know the next war won't be anything that lasts. The prospects of conflicts spill over leading to a global nuclear war, annihilating all life on Earth, remains dangerously high. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe and thumbs up if you enjoy the videos.